Welcome back to Two Gals in a Glass Half Full. Today, I am super excited. Our guest is from Australia and is going to teach us all about NLP, which is something I really didn't know much about, but I love. And I'm excited to learn more. So go ahead and subscribe below. And before we get started, Dr. Jess, what is in your glass?
Well, today I am working on staying hydrated. And so one of my favorite ways to do that is with my infused water. So I've got cucumber, mint, and lemon in there. And I just drink so much more when it tastes good. And I just keep refilling this glass because apparently if there's water in front of me, I'm more likely to drink it than if there's not. So that's my strategy. Look at it and have it taste better. So, Dr. Bobbie, what's in your glass?
I've already had water and tea. So every Saturday, our grocery store gives away like a free drink. Typically, it's a drink. So this is lemon water. So I'm trying it. I've never had it before. It's actually pretty good and doesn't have like artificial flavoring and stuff inside of it. It just kind of tastes like lemons with water. So
There we go. I like it. And so we have a special guest with us today, as Dr. Bobbie was saying. So Liz, before we do intros, what's in your glass?
Well, interestingly enough, it's 7 a.m. here, so I have got my morning electrolytes in my glass. I'm someone who has never even tried tea or coffee. It's
awesome.
never entered my mouth, and so electrolytes are what I start the day with.
There you go. That's awesome. I mean, that's a great way to start the day. Yeah. Liz, tell us a little bit about you. Like, what are you about?
Yeah, so my name's Elizabeth Ann Walker, and I'm in Australia, like you said, and I am a leading neuro-linguistic programming trainer. What that means is that I teach people how to be happy. We're just going to keep it really simple. I basically teach people how to be happy. And one thing I noticed when I was a child was that I was super happy and I seemed to live in a world that everything was right in. And what I mean by that is I could walk down the street and see a flower and that made the day right, regardless of what was happening in the rest of my world. And I noticed that a lot of people weren't. A lot of people weren't noticing the beauty. And as I became an adult, it dropped away even more. And it was like, how do these people not see what a fantastic life they could be having and how incredible life is and how the world's working for you in every single moment? And it didn't make sense to me. And so I just existed with no friends. And it was this really weird existence of being super happy, but not having any friends and wondering why, because I was also very direct, very blunt. I would just say things as they were. And, you know, in high school, that doesn't really work out with girls. And I went to a girls' school. So it's kind of like, okay, so you're not allowed to say that. You're not allowed to tell them if you go shopping for dresses and they ask how it looks. If it looks bad, you're supposed to just say, it's great. And I couldn't get my head around this psychology of what seemed to be lying to me. And I then, you know, as I grew up, I realized that, okay, everyone has their own personal truth and this is okay. And I still was direct and I still found adults were not actually living from their truth. And I was like, this is so weird and I don't get it. And I wonder why it's happening. And so I did a lot of, I guess, soul searching and started off with things like naturopathy, massage therapy, aromatherapy. I went into the spiritual stuff and learned a lot about all of that. And I was a registered nurse originally, and then I taught medicine at Sydney Uni for a long time. And then I was like, okay, this is all great, and it's not everything. And what else is there? And then I had the great experience of getting very, very unwell and finding that the system that I worked in and loved and cared about so much actually failed me completely. I ended up having 47 operations in a 3-year period. And I then was at that point of, okay, I'm done. I am so done. I don't want to live anymore. This is not living. This is existing. What am I going to do? I have no idea. I've got to get my head right. And so I went along to a Tony Robbins seminar, Unleash the Power Within. And at the time, I was in a wheelchair, unable to walk from all the surgeries. And I was wanting to learn about my brain and how could I accept that this physical boundary was now my life. And I'm sitting there. It was really fun. It was annoying that I couldn't stand up and dance. And I'm like, what is this? What is this thing? Like, this is weird, but it feels weird. I don't know what's happening, but okay, we'll just go along with it. And then all of a sudden, there's these drums playing and you're walking out towards this fire, and I'm being wheeled out towards this fire lane where everyone's going to walk over fire. And I got to the front and I'm like, do you realize that this thing has rubber wheels? Like, it's going to melt if you put this on the fire. And then two people just lifted me up and I walked across the fire. And I got to the end and I wasn't at all impressed that I'd walked on fire. I was just impressed that I could walk. And I was like, whoa, like I've had, like they actually cut my femoral nerve, which is the main nerve down your leg. And I couldn't walk. And then I've walked and I just kept walking. And I left my wheelchair at that event and went, what is this magic? I need to find out what this is. And I realized that Tony had studied neuro-linguistic programming. And so I went off and studied that, realized that a whole lot of people in the course I did weren't getting the same results that I was getting, and recognized that there was a whole lot of background learning that I'd done that they hadn't done. And I was like, oh, I actually can teach people this. Like I've been teaching for a long time. I know how to teach this. And so I'm going to go ahead and do my trainer's training and start teaching it. And we have a really different approach to it because the way that we teach is super integrated. So rather than it just being sit down in a lecture hall and learn about some stuff, it's actually experience it live right now in your own body, help other people right now in real situations, not role plays. And we get to do that. And I have no idea what the question was now. And this is the way I work because I just let the brain go. And this is what freedom feels like, right? It's like, okay, you asked a question. I remember you asking a question. I have no idea what the question was. I have no idea what direction we're going. And yet I bet you people are enjoying the way that I've spoken so far because there's no gates on it.
Right.
Yeah. And the gates are what stop people actually being happy. It's the, can I say that? Can I do that? Can I think that? And that's what stops happiness because it feels like there's a trap. It feels like you're in a cage or a box and you can't get out.
Yeah, no, I can definitely, I 100% resonate with all of that. And I think that's why there's these expectations of, you know, as you grow up, like you're supposed to get more serious and, you know, it's not funny. You have to be professional and, you know, like all of these like expectations. And that's why, like, I don't know, at some point I wasn't happy living like that. And, you know, like someone kind of just a comment had made, like, they were talking about one of my plants and they were like, oh, what kind of plant is that? I was like, oh, Eleanor. And he was like, what kind? I was like, well, I don't know the kind of plant, but her name's Eleanor. She is fantastic, gets moody in the afternoons. He's like, you name your plants. I was like, you can't ever take yourself so seriously that you don't name plants. Okay.
Yeah.
So, like, in this office, we name plants because
yeah, well, this one here, this is Jenny, and
see?
Jenny gets upset when I go away. And that's why she's
100%.
droopy.
And
She's
you're
just
like,
coming back.
yes, Jenny, I hear you. And I experienced that loss as well because I missed you too. But we're okay apart for periods, right? See, like she gets it.
She'll probably be standing up by the end of the call.
Exactly.
It's so funny you say that, but because it was honestly yesterday. I have next week a 1-year-old. And crazy how fast that first year goes. And I was watching her play and I was watching my boyfriend play with her and just how playful he is with her. And I realized like, like she's teaching me to play again because like it's not natural for me. I don't know at what point in my life I became this work only serious, person. And it's hard for me. It's hard for me to like actually like pretend play. And it's hard for me to imagine. And it's like, what happened? I was a kid at once. Like, why did we stop doing this as adults? And I know with practice, I'll get better at it, but it's definitely challenging for me right now.
Yeah, and the simple answer to that from a neuro-linguistic programming perspective is that generally we grow up initially as what's called kinesthetic, which is all about the feelings. And so when you watch children play, they're playing intuitively. They're feeling what it feels like. You know, little babies are putting their hand in their mouth because they're feeling what it feels like to feel around their mouth. They're sticking their fingers as far back as possible and trying to choke themselves because they're learning what their limitations are. And then they move on, like that oral phase in a child where they're 3 years old and they go up and they're just licking dirt and licking trees and like it's like they just look at they're just like and it's like what are you doing? All right, and then we go into this kinesthetic where it's all about feelings, and it's how does this make me feel? And then we tend to split off into our different representational systems. So the visual people start seeing everything, and they're the ones that move really fast. They're usually little pocket rockets. They're quite slim and short, and they're like all around the place. Everything's visual on what it looks like, right? And there's the kinesthetic people that are all like snuggly. They're the nurturers. They're quite slow. It's all about the feelings. They talk forever, and sometimes just like the visuals are like, "Can you hurry up?" And then we have this other representational system, which seems to be a throwback for most people. And it's called auditory digital. And so this is the people that talk to themselves in their head all the time. And there are some auditory digital people that are actually real, and they're like the super nerds. So think someone like Bill Gates. He's talking to himself in his head all the time, but he's talking about things that are creating stuff. Elon Musk, you know, talking in his head about how we can move to Mars. You've got those super nerd kind of people that are really auditory digital. But for most other people, they're auditory digital because something happened to them that let them know that it was no longer safe to feel. And when that thing happened where it was no longer safe to feel, they had to learn to think everything through. And so they think and think and think. And because they're not naturally thinkers, they're naturally feelers, but they're covering up the feelings with thoughts. Their thoughts are not that effective. So they go round and round and round, and it takes them forever to make a decision. And it takes them forever to change a decision. And it becomes quite debilitating, and it gets labeled things like ADHD, and it gets labeled things like, what are some of the other, like adult autism, and it gets labeled in all these like labels. And really what it is how can we bring these people back to a place where they feel safe in their body, safe enough to actually experience their feelings again and to truly act from those feelings. Which is hard because usually what they've done is they've put their heart in a little cage and they've gone, okay, no access because last time I let you in, you hurt me, whoever that was. And then they apply that to everyone. You know, it's kind of a little bit like people who have Asperger's. They struggle to apply anything to anyone, everyone. But people who are AD, they put their heart in a cage and then they go, everyone is not trustworthy. I need to think about it for everything. And so they're the people that will say things to you like, I just really need to think about that, or I need more details, right? Like in our world, if we're selling a course, they need more details and more details, to the point at the bottom of my website, it says, hey, I see you all the way down here. You've read every single thing. Are you ready yet? And so what I've just talked about is the representational systems, and those representational systems mean that people function and use different language. And so if you're visual and you're really fast and you're going, okay, you go down the street, you turn left at the lights, you go around the corner, and when you get to the, I don't know why I'm thinking milk bar for some reason, but anyway, when you get to the milk bar, you take a right. Like that's great for a visual person because they'll just drive and see all the things and turn. But if you do that to a kinesthetic person, they're like, what? Like, what do you mean? And so if you then say to them, go down to the lights where there's a pretty tree and it's going to make you feel amazing, and you go into their feelings, then they're going to get how to do it because they'll be able to do it with feeling. And with someone who's AD, you can actually just give them a street directory because they're fine to look at that because it's data and they love data. Yeah. But what happens, think about what happens if you've got a data-loving mother with a kinesthetic child, and the child wants to express all their feelings, and the mother's like, everything's rigid and data-based. It's 10 o'clock, we do this, right? The poor kinesthetic child is like, I just want to cuddle. And the mom's like, we've got to get this done. Equally, if you have a very AD child and you're kinesthetic, you're going to be the mum going, come on, just cuddle me. Like, and the child's like, no, we're doing this. Like, mummy, you said we're doing this. We're going off. And so learning this as a language is so important because we're all doing neuro-linguistic programming anyway. We just haven't studied it, right? We're all looking at how our world is created through the words that we speak. If we tell ourselves we're beautiful, we'll experience ourselves as beautiful. As long as we're telling it on the outside through our lips and on the inside in our head. Right? It has to happen on the inside as well. So if we tell ourselves we're beautiful, we'll experience the world as beautiful, we'll experience ourselves as beautiful. But if we're constantly looking at ourselves telling us something different, then that's the way we'll experience the world as well. And so our words are already creating our reality. That is the basis of neuro-linguistic programming, is looking at how your brain uses the words to program your life. And so by studying it and by actually learning how to utilize it, we can then change the trajectory of our life, change our experience of life, and essentially be more happy.
It's so we always hear, which so much stuff going through my head because like you think like I'm probably one of those like overthinkers of like, what do I say? What do I say? But it just makes so much sense to me. Like as you talked, I could see myself. Yep, that's what I do. Yep, that's what I do. And like just even with my child, like in my boyfriend, like just seeing that language, and it kind of reminded me of love languages. Yeah. Where everyone shows their love through different things. And this is like, you know, everyone's speaking and doing through different emotions or different, I'm not sure, what did you call it? The different dial.
Yeah, so we call it representational systems.
Representation. Yeah, through the different representation systems. And I am a relatively positive or optimistic person. And so, you know, when you said you kind of see things, you look and try and find the good in everything, and that's kind of what I do. But a lot of times it's for people around me, it's hard because they can't just think positively. And yeah, I think a lot of times that's what people get told is like, if you just keep saying it to yourself, if you just think positive, but if you don't have that education on how to do it or haven't been taught on how to change that mindset, that can be really challenging for someone.
Yeah, and it gets labeled as toxic positivity, right? If you're telling someone to just be positive all the time, it's like, oh, this is toxic positivity. I don't really subscribe to that label either, because why not be happy all the time? The thing is, you have to actually learn how to do it, because you've got a conscious mind and you've got an unconscious mind. And your conscious mind, it's really easy. It's really easy to say the thing, right? It's really easy to look in the mirror and go, you're beautiful. You're so beautiful. You look amazing today. This is fantastic. But if inside your head, it's going, eyebrows are sisters, not twins. My eyebrow is sticking up and this one's down, while you're saying the words, I'm happy, or you're looking going, oh, there's a little wrinkle under here. And you're saying, I'm really beautiful. Like that's a different brain, right? It's not your conscious mind, it's your unconscious mind. And your unconscious mind has been developed since you were tiny, and it holds all the programs. And so unless you can access that deep part of your mind and start to shift up the programs, you're going to still keep running programs. Like, you know, all mothers have at some point said, oh my God, I'm turning into my mom, right? We've all done something where it's like, I sound like my mother, right? And it's usually not a good thing. And when we do that, that's because there's that program is still in there from when we were a child. You know, I remember with my kids going, you can't go and play in the mud. And that's what my mother would have done when I got dressed up. I wasn't allowed to go play in the mud. And I'm like, I have 2 little boys. Like, why can't they play in the mud? We're at home. I have a shower right by the back door. Like, go play in the mud, because there's no reason not to. It's not cold. It's warm. It's going to be fine. It's a beautiful sun shower. Go do the thing. Yet a lot of people would go, oh no, they can't play in the mud because then I'll have to shower them and then I'll run late. And then like there's just this constant list of things that need to get ticked off. And so when we can access that deep part of our mind, we can start to undo the programs that no longer serve us and put in programs that do. So for example, when you were little and you were 10 years old, you believed you were 10. And that program served you because it meant you got a 10th birthday. It meant that you got a birthday cake, probably with the number 10 on it. You told people you were 10. It probably felt pretty good to be 10 because you'd finally hit double digits, and you fully believed that two whole hands, right? and you fully believed that you were 10. And right now, you're probably, if you're listening to this podcast, you're not 10 anymore. And if you are 10, hi, you're cool because you can get numbers on two hands. But if you're not 10, you don't believe that you're 10 anymore either. But there are some people who do. There's some people who still deep in the back of their mind, if you say to them, how old are you now? And they just answer without thinking, they'll give you a number that's quite young. And it's often the number at which some trauma happened for them, and they've locked in the programs that protected them then, and they're still using them now when they're 30 or 40 or 50, and those programs are no longer appropriate for them. So say you have a child that's grown up in a house where it's been dad's been at work all the time, mum's stressed out because there's 5 kids, and all they want is some attention and they don't get any. They might have become this loud, vivacious child at school. Then they got shut down because you're not allowed to do that at school. And so now they don't talk, but they're suddenly running this big company, and they want to, they want the company to do well. They want it to happen, but they don't know how to talk to other people because they shut that part of themselves down. And when you dig into that kind of trauma and you find out how old they are and they tell you that they're 10, you're like, hey, okay, cool. Let me talk to the 10-year-old that's inside that unconscious mind, and let's remind that person that they're actually safe, that they're an adult now, that the things that used to hurt them back then no longer hurt them now. And let's start actually creating change from the inside out, because we're always obsessed with creating change from the outside in, right? There's actually this unconscious mind just sits there holding, and it's holding it for our protection, right? It's holding on to these things for our protection. Our whole brain's function, the highest prime directive, the thing that the unconscious mind has to do is protect the body. And so if it thinks it's protecting us, it won't let us do anything else. There's this amazing little piece inside our brain called the amygdala, right? Or sometimes in the States it's called the amygdala. And it depends where you grow up. And this little thing, I don't know if you have video, but I'll do it anyway. It's like a little thing in the side of your brain. And then you have this beautiful cortex that covers it over. And the cortex is where all our high thinking happens. So we can make decisions. We can do incredible things with our prefrontal cortex. But as soon as there's a threat to us, our prefrontal cortex disappears because the amygdala hijacks it, right? So it's like, bah, and the amygdala takes over. None of our thinking or decision-making abilities are there anymore. It's literally impossible. And so if we've had something happen to us as a child where it's created a threat, and it's something really simple, like for me, it was I was actually 10, funnily enough, and I was playing up at the park, and these 2 boys started throwing stones at me and my friend, and so we ran into the toilets, and that was a really dumb idea because there's only one entrance, right? So then the boys just stood at the entrance throwing rocks at us, and for a long time I hated going into public toilet blocks because it was like, I don't want to go in there. I just don't like it. And I'd made up that it smelled, right? Now, granted, some of them do smell, but I'd made up this horrible story. I can't go in there because I'll smell it and then I want to vomit. But really, I wanted to vomit because I was remembering without remembering the event where I was petrified that these boys were going to kill me with these rocks. And so once I actually went into my unconscious mind, released the drama that had happened with that, accepted that I don't need that protection anymore. Like I'm older, I'm wiser, I'm not going to run into a toilet block for protection. Like that's not going to happen anymore. Then I can go, okay, cool. This is great. And I can just go into a toilet block. Now, of course, I'm keeping this surface level, but imagine if it's someone who loved you that hurt you. Then the next time you want to experience love and you're like, I need a great relationship, the next time you're probably just going to push that person away. Because it's like that in your unconscious mind, as soon as they do something wrong, like if they yell once at you, and let's face it, in relationships, someone's always going to yell at least once, right? And you're going to have this hijack in your amygdala because it's going to say, this is not safe. This person's going to, hurt you as well. And then you'll start creating things from the unconscious mind to push that person away. and then not be able to really connect with them, even though the trauma has been resolved for many years. So we can't just resolve trauma in our conscious mind. We have to go into the unconscious mind and disconnect the pieces that keep holding us in the past so that we can fully live in the present. Because if we think about, like, I'm going to go a bit weird now. So if you think about the now, it's right now. And if you think about the past, it's also now while you're thinking about it, right? And if you think about the future, it's also now. So the only reality we ever have is the now. And if we can't be fully present in the now, we're missing out on so much. And that's where joy comes from. Joy comes from being in the now. Joy comes from noticing, you know, there's a new flower in my garden this morning that's opened up. It's a beautiful pink camellia. And it's just like, hello. And I'm like, oh, you're so, like, to have that childlike wonder, for me to know that that flower goes, hello. It's like, that's so joyful to me. Whereas I could have just walked out the gate, not even noticed the flower. And a lot of people do that. But the fact that this flower is saying that to me, which is crazy, I get it. And for you, those of you listening that don't talk to plants and flowers, well, maybe you can have a go at that. It's so beautiful to see this bright pink flower. I've got a black wall, so it's a black wall, this green plant, a bright pink flower, and it's so incredible to me that I exist in the same world that created that. Like that childlike wonder of, and the fact that I'm wearing a pink jumper today was also really exciting because it's like, oh, we're matching. I wonder if you can look at life like that and how much joy you would have if you were fully present in the now. If you could be fully present in just who you are and what's happening in your heart and how that's making you feel. You know, like I see my grandson, I've got a new grandson, he's 12 weeks old and he's very, very cute. And when I see him, I get teary. Like I went to his swimming lesson on Saturday and I'm like, eventually my son's going to stop me seeing this child, because I look at him and I just burst into tears because he's so beautiful and he's just learning all this amazing stuff. He's 12 weeks old and he's kicking in the water, and like, how incredible. And this is how I think it. How incredible am I that I have kept this family line going, that I've raised my son into someone who can raise a son. Like, this is crazy. Like, and just that, the absolute, yeah, that heart, the sense of heart of this is so cool that this has happened. And then going, actually, there were times where I didn't raise him at all, because this kid, you know, he was a drug addict for quite a few years and he's turned his life around through NLP. And it's like, you know, all of the traumas that he had when he was little, because we had a pretty hectic, you know, young life with him, everything has been resolved, and he's now got this beautiful wife, a beautiful son, and it's all beautiful because he's present. I'm present. I'm not stressing about whether I did the wrong thing anymore. It's just the experience of, and that experience, my heart just, like, it beats outside my chest, and it's like, oh, the love that I have here. And if we can truly be in who we are and truly live from our truth, all of us would experience stuff like that. Because if you really get into people, it's like, yeah, I really love certain people. Like, people just love is really the only emotion, and everything else that's happening for us is an expression of the love that we either have or don't have. You know, like if we're experiencing fear, it's coming from the love we didn't get. And if we're experiencing that beautiful, bountiful love, then it's coming from the love that we've given ourselves as adults. Because as children, we might get love from our parents, but as adults, we have to give it to ourselves. And it's a big journey to love ourselves. Like,
yeah, that's huge. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I think there's so many people that go through, I mean, life isn't perfect. And like you're saying, like with the brain being so strong, that when you learn that message of don't show emotion, it isn't funny anymore. You're too old for that. You can't just, be silly and funny because it's not cool. And then you're going to get ridiculed or, whatever it might be. I just think you just see these like people kind of come into this like smaller and smaller version of themselves. And I mean, I did not have good middle school or high school years. I did not really resonate a lot with my classmates. I didn't, it wasn't fun at all.
Yeah.
Like at home, we could be silly and fun with my siblings. I could feel like I could be myself. I feel like when I opened the door to come home, I could just like take this mask off that I had
Yeah.
put on to just like survive the day, And it's like, that's exhausting. But like what you're saying of like having to come back and learn that like you're an adult now. Like
Yeah.
these like little pricks in school who are like making these like condescending comments or whatever it was, like it's not gonna hurt you anymore. Like that needs to like they don't matter. And so
Yeah.
how can you like what do you do to unlearn that lesson? Because it's really it's not you can't just forget it. It happened. It's that
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Like that's
It's the how does it affect you? And it's like, okay, how can we disconnect this so that when we're moving forward in life, we're not consistently looking over our shoulder?
right.
Because that's what slows people down. Like a lot of what I talk about and what people learn from me is, how to be successful. And it's the biggest key to success. There's two things. Number one, only look forward. And number two, keep going. Like that's actually all success is. But people will give you this big long list because the people who are the thinkers, they're like, it can't be that simple. It's like, it's actually that simple, but you can go and pay someone who'll give you 50 different ways to be successful if you want to, or you can actually just learn who you are.
Yeah.
Because the more that we can be who we are, the more that we're able to actually be successful in our version of success.
Yep.
A lot of people, when they're looking for success, it's like, if you think of a wheel of life, and it's like you can have success in any area. Like whatever area you call success is success. It doesn't necessarily need to be money. It doesn't necessarily need to be fitness. It doesn't, it can be any area of life that you can create success in that will make you feel successful. And that depends on who you are. But if you don't know who you are, because you've never actually stopped to look at the inside of you, then you're probably never going to feel successful.
So like when you're talking about like getting into that like not that front part of your brain, but that more like back of the brain where everything's stored, right?
Yeah.
So what are strategies that you like use to be able to help people get back to that back part of their brain so that they can work on some of this?
So first of all, we look at like the main thing is we're looking at language. So how do people actually speak? So I had a really great experience yesterday with one of my clients, and her big thing is she wants to feel successful, and she's already running a multi-million-dollar company, and she's got 2 kids, they've got a house, it all feels great, like her life is pretty great. And she's like, but I really want to feel successful. And I said, okay, what is successful? And she said, I don't want to want for anything. I'm like, okay, so if we look at that, I don't. So don't is a negation, right? It's saying that's something I don't want. So it's pushing away from something. And whenever you're pushing away from something, you're facing the past. So anytime you're using don't, can't, shouldn't, wouldn't, couldn't, then you're facing the past. Because if you know how to not do something, so if you say I can't, then that means you know how to not do the process of can. Yeah. And in order to know how to not do it, you must know how to do it, because otherwise you wouldn't know that you can't do it.
Right.
So when people say I can't, what they're really meaning instead of that is I need to gain more physical form to be able to climb that mountain. Or they're saying I am excited to learn how to use an Excel spreadsheet instead of just I can't. I'm just picking ones that affect me right now because I love Excel a lot.
Oh yeah, 100%.
No, I really don't. I just pay people to
it.
do it. Anything that requires an Excel spreadsheet, I just pay them to do it. That's how I'm so successful. It's like success is an avoidance of Excel. No. anytime you're saying I can't or I don't or I won't, you're facing the past and using a past version of you to limit the future version of you. So it's like people who say to me, oh, I can't, like this, here's a common one. I can't invest in your course right now because I don't have the money. And I'm like, do you have the money right now? Yes, I do have the money right now. Okay, great. So you could invest in the course if you wanted to. Yes, I could, but then in 3 weeks, I won't have the money. And it's like, okay, cool. So you're basing what you're earning right now and the way that you're doing life right now, you're then allowing that to affect your future. When actually, if you come and do the course, you're going to change your life. You're going to change the way you make money. And so in 3 weeks' time, you're going to be a completely different person who's not going to have the same problems you have right now, yet you're going to base your decision today on what you think it looks like when the past exists in the future. Like people have this time scramble going on. They take, magicians, they have the 3 cups and they put the ball under 1 cup and they move it all around. People are doing this consistently inside their brain. They're moving the past to the future. They're moving the future behind them. And they wonder why they're going round and round in circles. Well, what if we just stay in the now? And that there is no future and there is no past. There's just what we're experiencing right now. You can still plan for the future. You can still go, okay, cool, I'm going to do this so that I become the version of me I want to be in the future. But the strategies that we generally use is, first of all, let's get people back in their body, right? And the most simple way of doing that is to breathe, right? There's the 3 conscious breaths. Like if you just wake up in the morning and life's a bit stressful, you just in through your nose and this long breath out through your mouth, like just, if you do that 3 times before you get out of bed, you're going to be way more present. Instead of getting out of bed going, alarm off, go, 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 we've got to get in the shower because I've got to be here at late. Oh my God, like that existence would drive me insane. Yeah. So 3 short breaths. The next thing is I said, we're watching the language, then we're doing the breath. Then we're going, okay, let's disconnect and integrate some of the emotions from the past that are the things that keep pulling us back, because an emotion is energy in motion. And so if we've had anger in the past and we're still experiencing that anger now for something that happened in the past, then that anger is going to keep drawing us back to that past event. But anger is actually really cool. And this is what people forget. People forget that passion is just integrated anger. Right? So if we can integrate anger, then we have all this passion that we get to move forward with. So if we're really angry, like I had an ex-husband that was very abusive, and there was a lot of anger for a long time there for me. And I was like, I would see someone in the shopping center where their husband would say no to them for something, and I'd be like, oh, they're being abused. Like I just had this whole frame that every woman who had a husband that ever said anything bad to them was being abused. And then after I studied all this, I was like, okay, this is interesting. And now if I do get angry, because let's face it, we're all going to get angry if something really annoys us, right? I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I'm really like, instead of getting super angry, I get angry. And then I go, this is interesting. I'm really passionate about this. How can I turn this into a piece of content? How can I create this into something that's going to be beneficial for me, my family, for the other person involved? And so if we can actually take that energy and motion, transmute it in our body instead of getting it stuck in our body, and then push it out as a different kind of energy, then we're actually having this great experience in life instead of just looking at the past where the anger happened. So those are the kind of things we do.
I could totally see that too. I mean, really, if you walk into the day of like I have the privilege of being part of this day, and I'm excited to be able to be here or whatever. I mean, it doesn't matter as long as you say it, right? Like I came in on Monday and I didn't have any front desk coverage. It's hot here, it's summer, the AC wasn't working, and I'm like, oh, good. Okay. Everything's fine. I still want to have a good day. So what can I do to still have a good day? I have the privilege of being in this space. It's a happy space. Eleanor lifted me up a little bit. We got it all figured out, right? But it's like that easily could have been like such like the whole day could have gone down just because I've been like, oh, I can't believe this happened and this is so horrible. And instead it's like it takes so much like fortitude to say, I don't want that. I still want today to be a good day. And it can be. Get
Yeah.
a plan, make some calls, it'll be okay. The
Yeah.
phone's gonna go to voicemail. I don't work in emergency services. It's okay.
Yeah.
It was such a quiet day. It was actually really nice. Like nobody's coming in and out. It was quiet. Luckily, you know, no patients really needed to call and move their appointments or something. That would have been a bummer. But that like forcing the pause to say, not how I intended the day to start.
Yeah. And
I thought
it's
it was
okay.
different.
It's okay to acknowledge that. It's okay to acknowledge, like, okay, this is not where I wanted to be right now.
Right. Wasn't my
And
choice this. And I'm
yeah,
already sweaty.
and now I have a choice.
Right.
Right. So that's the biggest thing, is showing people they have choices. Because a lot of people think they don't.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot
I
of
love
people
when you,
let that go.
I was gonna say, I like you talk about breathing, and my daughter, she's only almost 1, but boy, does she have a temper. Like no other. Does she, like, she'll just sit there and scream at you. And so like even now I'm working with her because she doesn't understand yet, but one day she will. Is like every time she's just screaming and I'm holding her, hugging her, and I'll look at her and I'm like, just take a deep breath, let's breathe. And I work on, showing her and stuff. And yeah, no, she doesn't get it right now, but what I'm hoping is as she continues to see it time and time and time again, when she's so frustrated, upset that she can't control her emotions, she'll eventually learn, okay, when I feel like this, let's take a deep breath.
Absolutely. That's linguistic programming, right? You start from day one.
Yep.
And those programs are what goes in. And so if you're teaching her those positive programs right now that she can learn, that's so advantageous compared to what we got told when we were screaming when we were kids. Like, oh my goodness. Like it definitely wasn't take a deep breath.
It was be quiet and sit down.
Yeah. Be quiet, get out, go to your room.
Remove yourself from the situation if you can't look composed all the time.
Yeah, and no wonder we isolate emotions.
Right.
Because that's what we were taught to do.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very like I think we're always on these journeys in life of how to really experience life. And in my scenario, my stepsister passed away when I was a teenager. And so I learned very, very quickly that tomorrow is not a given. Like today, you have to live today, because otherwise, like if you're just like waiting for tomorrow to happen, like I'm going to be happy when, and then you have this checklist of like when you're going to be happy. It's like if I make enough money, if I, buy a house, if I, all of these like things typically is what it is, and then I'll be happy. It's like, well, I don't think that's the answer. It was like that middle school brain. It took a long time for me to understand that, okay, yes, like that shut off of like, don't get close to anybody because they could die or hurt you. Right? Because that's what happens. I mean, clearly you get a phone call and they're dead. So right, that's just how it works.
That was.
But people say, but like it's not like, what's the worst case, what's the worst that could happen? I'm like, oh, I could list 10. Right. So it's that having to like deal with all of that and then finally say like, I really just want to be happy today, not tomorrow. Today. I want today to be a good day. And there's days where that is so much easier, and there's days where you're like, okay, let me just give me a minute. I'm gonna find it. Like, and that's okay, because guess what? Nobody promises it's gonna be easy. I think that's the difference too, is that we expect that being happy just comes easily. You make it seem so easy. It's like, It's not easy. It's constant work because the
Yeah.
negativity and the perseverating thoughts of why it won't happen, of why it won't work, of why this and why, all of this stuff, that's easy. Like I do that very easily.
Yeah.
Harder.
Everyone does, because that beautiful old-fashioned part of our brain that's trying to keep us safe is
Right.
consistently looking for danger.
Yes.
So it's actually wired in us to be negative because we're constantly looking for danger so that we can stay safe.
Yep.
But what would happen if instead of looking for the danger, we looked for what's beautiful, what's amazing, what makes us happy, what brings us joy that's already there? Because a lot of people do equate things like money to feeling happy, right? If I earn a lot of money, I'm successful, I'll be happy. Well, one of the things I learned when I was a single mom was that I really liked gardening, and I found that if I was in the garden a lot, then I wasn't stressed out. And so I couldn't afford to buy plants. I could barely afford to buy seeds. But what I could do was use Facebook Marketplace, where people give away plants all the time. People are consistently cleaning out their gardens, doing something. And what I also could do is I could go around to places where they were knocking the house down. And before they knocked the house down and decimated the garden, I could go and dig out plants. And I did that when I was, barely earning, like I was basically on what you would call in the States Social Security. I was, not making enough money to buy food for my kids. I had a friend that owned a food factory that I would go and get lasagna and chicken nuggets from. And my biggest joy was going and rescuing plants from a house that was going to get knocked down or from someone off Facebook Marketplace. I'm now a multi-millionaire, and I can tell you that every single plant in my garden I've not paid for. It has come from Facebook Marketplace or from a house that's going to be knocked down, because it still brings me joy. Like, things that bring you joy don't change when you have money.
Right.
Like, I could go and get my whole garden architecturally designed and pay for fancy overseas plants and everything. I don't want to, because I look at the plants and I'm like, oh, if I don't take you, you're just going to be thrown out. And I want you to survive and have a great life. So come with me, and, and I'll drive 2 hours or 3 hours to go and rescue plants. And, which sounds crazy. And my garden is so beautiful in terms of its eclectic nature. It's not that sterile designed fancy garden. It is just like there's this random old-fashioned plant there, and then there's this new plant over here, and there's red and pink next to each other, and and it just is a happy garden. And that joy is real joy, and it's not come from the money that I've made. It's come from just, I found something that truly brings me joy. And people go to me, what are you doing today? And I'm like, actually, I'm having a day in the garden. And they're like, oh, okay. I'm like, yeah, that's what I want to do. Like, I actually love doing that. Or, what day is it? Oh, it's Friday. All my plants inside get a wipe over. Like, you can make their leaves not have a dust on them anymore. And I think that if you look at people who are spouting the big money success, like, I have it, but you won't see me doing the post about, hey, I've got this because of this. Like, you don't see me walking down the street with the handbag and stuff like that. Now, if you want that, that's fine. If handbags make you happy, go buy them. Make enough money so you can have the handbag that you want. I experimented with that. When we first started being successful, I was like, okay, maybe I should buy like a fancy handbag. And I end up still putting it on the ground. I don't look after it because it's just something that carries all my stuff. And like, I'm much better off with a calico bag that I can throw anywhere and just throw in the wash when I'm done than having this $10,000 handbag that just gets chucked everywhere. And, you have to do what makes you happy. And this is the biggest thing, is that different people have different things that make them happy. For me, it's the plants, it's the garden, it's spending time with my family. For other people, it's the Lamborghini, it's the fancy house. Whatever makes you happy is the thing that creates success for you. And all of that comes from the inside out, not the
Well,
outside.
and with those, I was gonna say, with the plants, and you do what makes you happy, you're now also get to walk into a garden, and every plant you look at brings a happy memory of,
Yes.
where you got it, or the experience of getting it, or watching it grow. And so it's kind of like double fold. Like, you get the joy in actually going to get the plant, and then in the joy in seeing the plant and watching it grow through there.
Yeah, I planted a new garden on the weekend, and my husband came out and he goes, "Why did you plant that?" And it was this plant that was dead except for one leaf. So it's about, say a football sized plant, and it had one green leaf and the rest were all brown. And he's like, "Why did you plant that?" And I said, "Because it just wanted to be in the ground. It's been in a pot for 3 weeks. Like, it just wanted to be in the ground. It'll come back." And the next day it had three green leaves, and it's like, okay, cool. Like, this is going to be exciting watching this dead plant in the front garden suddenly go green again. So yeah, it is the joy that comes with, that memory of where we got it. It comes from the new life. It comes from the growth. Like, and when we can get that into humans, that's what really brings me joy, is how can I find a human that is devastated with where they are in life right now, that's just not happy. And when I can get inside with them, right? Because it's not a do to thing, it's a do with thing. And when I can get inside with them and break down some of those old things and then let them realize that life gets to be experienced joyfully all the time. It doesn't mean bad things aren't going to happen. Bad things always happen. But it does mean that you can see it through the lens of joy and the lens of growth and the lens of excitement for what's going to come next. And then that makes the whole world better, which is what makes me really happy. If everyone wakes up and says good morning, that makes me happy.
Exactly. The acceptance that you can't control it. It's not like it's the willingness to let it unfold and be part of the unfolding. That is so hard for us as humans to
and to even be in awe of the unfolding.
Right.
Like, I had this beautiful friend pass away 2 weeks ago now. And he was older. He was almost 87. And his wife wanted to do death well. And, typically in white Anglo-Saxon communities, we don't do death that well. And so we got to experience this beautiful hospice with her and her husband. And, as he declined, things changed. And we just got to be there with her. And she shared the whole journey on social media. And the amount of people that have gone, "Oh my God, thank you for showing us that death can be this beautiful experience and that it doesn't have to be, you can still have grief, but it can still be beautiful." And, today we're going to announce, or like at the time of recording this podcast, we're going to announce when his memorial is. And she's asked me to pop over after this so that we can go live on Facebook and Instagram. And, and she's 74 and she's got this massive community online, and she wants to go live to announce the memorial because she wants to thank everyone. And like, I'm so grateful that people around me can be joyful, even in the moments where most people would be devastated. There's a level of joy still there. And, you said before, life's not a given, right? Every day is a gift. And I have one little thing that your listeners could do. If they put 100 squares on a piece of paper, so do 9 lines across, I think it's 10 lines down, that'll give you 100 squares. First of all, you're going to cross off how many years old you are. So you start at box number 1 and say you're 30, you cross off 30 boxes. Then you're going to go to the end and you're going to go, okay, probably from 95 to 100, I'm probably not going to be doing that much. So cross off 5 boxes there. Then out of the ones that are left, you're going to cross out 1/3 of them, because that's how long you sleep for. When you look at the number of boxes that are left, you'll suddenly get in love with your life, because there's not that many.
Sure.
Yeah.
The perspective that's awesome. That's a really cool for a visual person.
Yeah.
That's very helpful. Yeah, I love that. I think there's a lot of unpacking, I think, in something like neuro-linguistics programming that to me seems very straightforward and achievable, if that makes sense. Like, it's like practical stuff, like things that you can do that kind of challenge you to say, okay, this is your part, and here's how I'm going to help you do your part. So it doesn't create that dependency, but rather the independence in the person. So, I mean, that's a lot of what I'm hearing when you're talking, which as somebody that, is very supportive of mental health counseling in the world of just being challenged to not let that amygdala just run your life, but like how to get back into that more logical thinking to say, wait a minute, like 10-year-old self,
Yeah.
like, you know, like I'm pretty sure you're trying to drive the train right here. And for me, it was a 13-year-old self. So I don't want that 13-year-old driving my boat. You know, that's like I want this other person that's had a lot more life experience
Yes.
to be driving this ship. And so and how we get into the brain is like really interesting. And when you say it out loud, you're like, well, duh. Right?
This
Like
is the thing, right?
that makes sense.
It's like, how do I have such success at teaching people stuff that's so simple? The
Right.
thing is, life's become really complicated. There's so many things in life that people have forgotten the simple stuff. And it is a practice. Like, it's not like, you know, here's one session and you're cured. It's here's what you need to do. Can you go and do that? Make it a practice, make it a daily discipline, and your life will actually change.
Mhm.
And, you know, you can take something so simple, like, and when I say simple, it's complicated for a lot of people. So if we take something like depression, the reason that someone's depressed is they have no energy. And the reason that they have no energy is that they're focused on the past. And energy doesn't exist in the past. Energy exists now. So depression is focusing on the past. Anxiety is focusing on the future, you know, where there's fear of the future. And so if we can get people to feel safe enough in their body to be present in the now, then they're not going to experience those two major mental illnesses. Right. And that's so simple. That's like a super reductive way of looking at anxiety and depression. And yet the people that I've worked with, and I've worked with lots of people who've had post-traumatic stress disorder from the armed forces that have served in active combat, you know, where they've had this PTSD diagnosis. And then when you get them back in the present, it disappears. Like, and you can do that in 2 hours with some of the techniques. They're mind blown. They're like, I didn't know this was even available to me. Like, and that then the joy that they can experience, like they can actually look at their kids and enjoy them. They can actually go outside and go, wow, I can actually feel the sun instead of being hypervigilant looking for danger. And we just need to dial that amygdala right down, because we all live in a relatively, and look, I live in Australia, so Australia is a pretty safe place. Okay. So, you know, we all live in a relatively safe world. Right. And I know that it is a little bit different in the States. I know that there are places that are actually quite dangerous over there. But you know, I've had friends from the States come out here and, you know, we're walking around with our handbags on our shoulder and they're like, are you not worried that someone's going to take your handbag? I'm like, no, like that just wouldn't happen. This is not a thing. Like, and so how can you be in a world where that doesn't exist? Because I'm sure that in Australia, there are places where that happens. And yet, in my world, it doesn't happen. You know, when I walk down the street, I see everyone as beautiful and happy. How do you create the world that way instead of, you know, and a simple tip, turn off the news. And literally just turn off the news. It rarely has anything important to say.
Yeah. I have people that are like, you should stay up on the current events. I was like,
yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. So let me make sure, like, outside of like treating my patients, being present with you, then I need to come home, be present with my husband and my kids, make sure that we get kind of, you know, that positive time together. It's a kind of a thing we do. And then my husband and I like to just kind of sit together at the end of the day and say, hi, how are you? Right? Like I haven't really seen you today. We've been in the same space, but like, you know, like life is busy. So, and then guess what? Then it's time to sleep, and then we do it all over again. So now let me turn that on, and how is that going to impact how we're raising our family, how we're conducting ourselves in our professional lives, and how we're connecting as a couple? Like, at what point in time does that actually help any of those?
It just doesn't.
It doesn't.
It doesn't. It's only going to
And
bring
there's
you
nothing
down.
positive ever said
No.
on it. I mean, I'm not gonna say ever, but
Yeah, exactly. Yes, vote, but you can research candidates. You know
Yes.
something's coming up. You can research the candidates. And so, yes, I do think I want to have educated decisions and things like that. But just to have stuff fed to me of how I should think or feel about what has happened in the day that has nothing to do with how my day has gone, the
Yeah,
answer is no.
exactly.
And why? I'll tell you why. It's not just because I don't feel like it. It's not going to bring anything positive to the day. So those get chucked
Yeah,
out. Only put stuff in that's going to move you forward, that's going to help in some way. Like,
yeah.
heaven forbid you get outside and like hear the birds outside. And you know what happens when you look at clouds? Animals pop out. It's so cool.
It's
Like,
actually cool.
it's so fun. Or like the sunset and the amount of variations of pink and purple that happen. I mean, it's incredible. Like, no, I'm not watching the news. Not
Yeah,
happening.
yeah. So good. I love that.
Well,
Oh,
Liz, I love, like, this is
Yes.
like you're like we are drinking your Kool-Aid. This is like awesome. I love every part of this. So if people want to know more about you, we are going to put all the info in the episode description so that there's clickable links and all of that kind of fun stuff. Because I really think this is I'm very happy that we got this scheduled because it's very cool, very cool. I love this.
yeah.
And hopefully
Yeah.
people
So
find
if
this to be
people are,
helpful.
yeah, and if people are wanting to know more about me, like all those links will be there. Just follow me on Instagram. I actually manage my own Instagram. So it will be me that writes back to you. So if you want to actually reach out and chat to me, I'm there and it's
Yeah,
me.
that's
Yeah.
That's
awesome.
awesome.
Yeah. And if
So,
you're listening to this and you resonate with it and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so great, like share this episode. So
yeah.
share it with other people. Like, don't just hold it for yourself, and not in a judgmental, like you should, right? So it's like, hey, I found this to be helpful. Maybe you would as well. And let somebody else just kind of unfold that and let it be theirs at that point. And they can take it where they want. And ideally, that's kind of how all of this positivity spreads, is just based on, I mean, it's honestly changing belief system of I am able to be positive and I want to be positive for those around me, and receive them with less judgment, and then ideally be received with less judgment. And the more we do that in our lives, the more we create this network of people, because we are meant as humans to be in a network of other people. That's kind of how we function. So getting that healthier network actually is mutually beneficial. So so anyway, again, I love this stuff. So I think Dr. Bobbie feels the same.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're so welcome. It's been really fun being here. And I'm really excited for this to go live and for more people to be impacted by the happiness of now.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just now. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Stay tuned for next week.